All right, good morning, folks. Our waiting room has come down a little bit. It's nice to see a good, healthy crowd here today. Welcome back to our first coffee with a principal in a little while, which is probably good news because usually these are to clear up any misconceptions or to tell us what the new changes have been. So our focus today is going to be a little bit different, but I wanted to go over a couple guidelines first. We are recording the meeting. So we will have it streamed to our YouTube channel. So if you need to leave early or someone else that you know missed it, there will be an opportunity to view that. Please keep your microphones muted, but we do want to hear from you. So if you have a question, you can feel free to unmute your mic and ask it directly or put it into the chat, and we will do our best to answer all of our questions, whether they are asked or placed in the chat. If you have a private question, you don't want to put it out publicly, feel free to private chat Pamela Hansen. She's the co-host of this meeting and will receive those. I do not see the chats directly, so I won't see those private chats. And then if you have questions that pertain only to your child or something unique, private message or email us and we can make sure that we answer that outside of this meeting. But we're super excited to see so many of you here today. Today's themes are really threefold. We want to review a little bit about where we've been, where we are right now, and where we're going. We've had a lot of these virtual coffees where we've been very speculative as far as our future. And we still have a little bit of that, but we feel a lot more certain now than we have in the past. So we're going to start out on the where we've been, but we're not going to dwell too long. Nobody wants to relive this past year that we just had. But I wanted to start out by first expressing my gratitude towards all of our families, our parents, all of our staff, our teachers, our classified staff. It's been a really, really rough year. And we've been able to do some amazing things on behalf of our kids, but it's really been the collective effort that has allowed us to do that. So we really appreciate the flexibility, the understanding, the willingness to go with the flow at times when notice on things were very, very short. And we really appreciate that because we were able to do some amazing things for our kids that very few others have been able to do. So I really wanted to thank you, and I do believe our kids truly benefited from that. I wanted to share a few stats with you on some numbers. As many of you know, we kept a COVID dashboard because what was really important for our families was they had readily available information as to how COVID was impacting our communities, either through zip code or through region or through state or national. And those numbers were readily available. But what was really important to our families was how is COVID directly impacting our school? And when the call would come out that a class would be quarantined, is that one class or is that the whole school, and how widespread is it? So to let you know, as of now, we've had 37 students and staff members that have tested positive for COVID over the course of the year. And that puts it to about 7% of that population of students and staff. Most importantly in those statistics is that in most of those cases, there was either no or mild symptoms. And we have fortunately not have anyone in our school community, our students or our staff, that had any serious complications related to COVID. So we were really very fortunate and pleased that although we did have 7% of folks that did test positive for COVID, the ramifications to them were not as serious as we've seen in other cases. About 13 of those cases, so like I said, nearly 40 cases, about 13, about a third of them occurred in January alone. So we saw a really big surge in January when there was a surge regionally. And so since that time, we've had very minimal cases. In fact, we've only had 2 cases in the month of May and none so far in June. About 19 of those, about half of those were school impact cases. And what that means is that we had an individual that tested positive for COVID that was presumed to be on campus while in an infectious state. And so those are those cases that we had some level of quarantine, whether they were whole class or sports teams or whoever those individuals had an impact on. And those are the ones that were really very difficult on students and families because they were so prolonged. You know, those quarantines lasted about 2 weeks. The good news on all of this is not only are things slowing down, but with all the cases that we've had 0 cases that were presumed or thought to be spread at school. So really what we found is then when the outside community rates rose, we had a proportional rise in cases that impacted our school. But fortunately, none that we're aware of or none that we presume were spread at school. And so it really made us feel good that the safety mitigations that we put in place, the screens and the masks and the barriers and the distancing and the cohorting and all those things that made life a little challenging seemed to be working. And so we were very fortunate that we didn't have any evidence that there was any spread here at school. I think another contributing factor is there still is less of a belief that students or children spread it at the same rates as adults. So we do feel fortunate as far as that's going. We also feel fortunate that the case numbers, not only at San Pasquale, but proportionally in the community, continue to drop. And so we're at a good place right now as far as how we're looking in the community and how we're looking here at school, which kind of brings us to the where are we now section. We've got almost 95% of our students that are attending in-person full-time school at San Pasquale. So we are as close to back to normal as you could ask. We still have a little over 5% of kids that are choosing distance learning or some form of a hybrid learning. And we're still remaining vigilant with all of those things. And so we're keeping those safety things in place for the remainder of the year. But based on the reduction of that risk, we are lessening some of the restrictions that we had. So there are classes that are doing some end of year parties and activities. And so we are allowing a small number of adults on campus for that, 3 per party or event, masked, distanced, so forth, encouraging a lot of those activities to be outside, but we are providing some access back here to our activities and to be part of what's going on here at the school. There was a question in the chat that says, can you share why the total number of staff and students on campus dropped so significantly in May? Yeah, so what that's probably referring to is on our dashboard, 2 times a month, we're required to report to the county and to the state which numbers of kids are in on-campus or off-campus or distance learning. And so in May, you'll see on that dashboard a significant reduction in students that were learning on campus. And what that was for is we had 2 cases in May that affected both cohorts of our 8th grade, and those shut down our 8th grade classes. And so we had 2 classes that were out on distance learning. And so when those numbers get reported, they get reported on a certain day and time. And so that's why you'll see a reduction of those. And when the it's updated, if we have our June update in there or late May update, you'll see those numbers go back up to that 95% of students that are there. So hopefully that answered that question for you. Do we happen to know how the 7% benchmarks against other comparable schools? Really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. Individual schools will post, many of them will post dashboards on their websites, but I'm not aware, and maybe Mrs. Lee is, I'm not aware of any place that information is congregated. Mrs. Lee, any information on how that compares to other places?
I do not have any information to add.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know where that is to compare it. Like I said, it's higher than I would like it to be, but we were, like I said, fortunate that we didn't see any of that spread here. Getting back to kind of where we're moving into as far as some normalization stuff. This time of year, we oftentimes have a lot of plays and performances and things that we do here at school that obviously can't be done the same way that we've done it before. But we did feel really good about our ability to put on a variety show. So if you had some kids that were participated in that or heard about that, a couple weeks ago, we were able to put on a show. in the barn with the doors open, so we were ventilated, socially distanced and masked. The guidance right now allows performers to remove their masks when they're performing, and then they put them back on when they're not. And we had about 15 acts, and we had no more than 4 people attending per performer. And things seemed to go really, really well. And that gave us some confidence in moving forward with some performances here at school. And so your class, your child's class may be participating in some performance stuff. Some teachers are just videotaping it, sending it to you. Some are doing some things outside. We have 1 or 2 that are doing it similar to the variety show, ventilated in the barn. If we can have audiences for those, if space permits us for distancing, like the barn does or Saints Plaza would, we are restricting it to 2 to 3 guests. Like I said, distance masked in family groups. So we're looking at trying to provide some of these opportunities that we can still do in a safe way. We also had just recently our first community service project. We have a lot of our scouts that do really wonderful things here at the school, and some of the benches that you see or some of the pavers that you see have been scout projects. And we were really pleased. Girl Scout Troop 2355 did a bathroom project, which is the first that we've had. And what they did, which was really super, is they put positive affirmation messages into the girls' bathrooms. And so really good messages for our students, good messages for our girls. And the project turned out amazing. And we'll get some pictures out through social media and show that to you. But we're really proud of those girls. And we're really happy we can finally start doing some of these things. So moving into next week, the final week of the school year. So we are 1 week away from the last day of school. We've got some really cool things planned for next week. If you have an 8th grader, your 8th grader will participate. Actually, all students will participate, but the 8th graders will get a little special participation in our senior walk. So on Monday, our senior walk is one that we invite students that were 8th graders 4 years ago today, just getting ready to go to high school, and they come back as high school graduates. And we have a semi-parade for them, and this will be one of those cohorted, socially distanced parades where they come through campus. We cheer them on, welcome them back to school. And then we have them in the barn meeting with our 8th grade students and telling them what they wish they knew when they were 8th grade, how high school went for them, what were the things that made them successful, where they're going on their next steps, and really plant the seed for our kids' future, and to give them some advice on that high school transition, but also to let them know that what they're doing is pretty important and that they are making decisions in their life that will impact their life moving forward. And so it's a really nice event to see some kids that we haven't seen for a while that are doing really well, and to impart some wisdom on them. So we have that senior walk scheduled for Monday. Also Monday is our device collection. So if you did check out a device from school, a Chromebook, an iPad, a hotspot, something like that, we are collecting those up to make sure that we can inventory them, fix anything that's broken, get things repaired, and get them ready for the next school year. So we are asking folks to bring those back on Monday, June 7th. If you are a distance learner, hang on to that, because you'll need it if you need it for the rest of the week. Hang on to it till the last day of school, and you can return it to us then. Mrs. Lee, anything you wanted to add about device collection?
Yes, we will be collecting those in the classroom. So please keep them with your students. Make sure that they're fully charged. We will be checking to see that they can still turn on, checking for cracked screens, cracked frames, missing keys, etc. All of that will be noted, and we'll get back to you if we see anything. We also need your chargers. And if you had an iPad, make sure you send the cube in with the children. So distance learners can bring those devices to the office on Wednesday or Thursday, but otherwise everyone else will have it collected from the classroom. I think that's it. Okay.
All right. Also coming out next week, you'll see our final survey of the year. We have asked your opinion a lot this year, and we're going to do it just one more time. We were really fortunate to receive a school climate transformation grant survey. It was a large federally funded survey. And through that survey, we're implementing what's called MTSS, which is a multi-tiered system of support that supports kids both academically and socially and emotionally. But what it also does for us is it gets us access to having social workers on campus. And so we have currently 2 social worker interns, and we have a former social worker from the County Office of Ed, who all are supporting our students here at school. And part of that grant is sort of a before and after school climate survey. So it's about 10 minutes. We'll be sending that survey link out to parents and encourage you guys to answer that. It'll also go out to our staff, and it'll also be offered to students. There is a ability to opt out. So you'll see some information about your student survey, but let us know if you don't want your kids participating. But the reason we're sending it out now is not because we think you have the capacity for it or want it, but it does support us maintaining our ability to participate in that grant project. And then I probably don't have to tell you, but Thursday, a week from today, is the last day of school. And so one important thing to note for that last day of school, it is an early release day. So that means that the normal time that your kid would get out on Friday, so for our elementary students around 11:05, 11:10, depending on their age, that's their dismissal on Friday. And then your middle school students getting out at 12:25. So early release day a week from today on that last day of school. That'll be the same day that report cards go home as well. And it's also the same day of our 8th grade promotion. So we'll get another reminder out to parents of 8th graders. But just as a review, promotions at 6 o'clock at night. We'll open our gates at 5:15. We want our graduates there by 5:30. And really what we're gonna end up doing is we're not doing a ticketing system per se, but we do need your whole party to show up at the same time with your graduate. Your graduate is your ticket to get in. We have set up, or will be setting up, Saints Plaza in a way that we can accommodate up to 4 guests per family, 5 if the 5th one is 10 and under. So if you have a child 10 and under, we can do 5 and still have people distanced. They're a little bit smaller than the average. Actually, gates open up at 5 p.m., I'm sorry. And then 5:30, graduates should be here by. And we're gonna have you come in, proceed, we'll escort you directly to a place to sit. We will ask you to stay at that seat, maintain your masks on for the duration, and then we'll have a similarly orderly exit. A couple of things that we won't be able to do that we normally do. We normally have graduates kind of come and proceed up through the crowd. We won't be able to do that this year. And we also will have graduates sort of entering and exiting from the same part of the stage. So when you come in, we will look to seat you on the same side as your graduate. So we'll do those types of things. We won't have opportunities for photo ops and those kind of things either. Current guidance needs families to stay together. And so we'll be looking to keep you guys together. So I know it's a lot of information. We'll be sending that stuff out to you. Yep, we'll be sending that stuff out to you so that you know it. But if you have any questions on it, let us know. And then that takes us to the where are we going part, which is probably why all of you tuned in. A couple things that we're waiting on. There's some guidance that's supposed to be coming out, but all the guidance we're hearing is really favorable. In the past, we've had a lot of doom and gloom guidance that have really restricted what we can do. What we're expecting pretty soon, should be out soon, is some guidance from OSHA. OSHA regulates workplaces, and since schools are considered workplaces as well, we have some guidance there. And what we're waiting on OSHA, hopefully, is to align their guidance to some of the health guidance from the state, which they have not always been in line. So we're waiting on that. That should come out real soon. As you, I'm sure, have heard, in about 2 weeks, the governor is supposed to come out with new guidance for the state as a whole and drop a lot of the restrictions. We're hearing right now that the whole tier system is going to drop. So the purple and the red and the yellow and all that kind of stuff, and that things are supposed to open up much more significantly. The key question for us is how is that going to affect schools? Because there tends to be one line of guidance for the rest of the world and another one for schools. So we're gonna wait to see how that affects us. And then there's some other stuff that they're supposed to tell us in October. So as big changes come, we'll continue to keep you apprised of that. So we normally don't communicate a whole lot over the summertime, but we will make an exception for that as new things come out and we learn what things are looking like. But we really are, at the moment, really planning for a pretty normal opening to the school year. I'll get to that in just a moment. We had some questions about what's being offered during the summertime. We do not have an offering of a whole school summer school, so we don't have a whole school summer school program. What we got mostly is our teachers and our parents and definitely our students were saying, hey, we need a little bit of a break. And so they wanted their summer break. But we do have some populations of kids that were disproportionately affected that we really want to serve. And so we do have an extended school year, which is summer school for students with disabilities that qualify under their IEPs. We have a summer school program for elementary age students that are struggling with their reading. And so teachers are reaching out to students that are 6 months or more behind in their reading to provide some reading support for that program. And we're looking at some programs to support our English learners as well at particular grade levels. So we're pulling all this out. We expect these programs to be offered during the month of July. The reading program and the ESY program are looked at 4 days a week in the morning times, Monday through Thursdays. So we are offering those, but not a whole school summer school. But expect your teachers to be sending out some summer school bridge work. So if there's some things that you want your child to be working on and you have not received that yet, reach out to your teachers about what are some resources that you have over the summer to keep them reading, to keep them into their math, to keep them writing, so that they continue their learning progress and don't see that infamous summer slide. We are, as we get a little bit closer to the school year, we are offering our TK Kindergarten Boot Camp. For those of you that may affect, what that is, it's an orientation for our students that are entering transitional kindergarten or kindergarten. That's gonna be on August 9th and 10th from 9 to 11. There's no charge for that. What we found is the students who come in for that summer school, couple hours to get oriented to school, and they do so outside the chaos of everyone coming back to school, they really are much more successful in those early days. And so we will have a parent orientation built into that, but that time is really dedicated on the 9th and 10th of August to get your kids ready for school so that they're ready for that next week. That next week, what it looks like is on Monday, the 16th of August is our Saints Day. And so we are planning on having Saints Day again next year. How that's going to look will depend on kind of what the current health conditions and current guidance will be. So it may be staggered. It may be full on. We all get together and see each other in a big group for a while, for once in a long while. But that remains to be seen what it'll look like. But we are planning on hosting our Saints Day, and we'll give you more details as we get closer to the middle of August. First day of school is August 18th. So August 18th, Wednesday, August 18th is our first day of school, and our full year calendar is up on our website. So if you're interested in when the holidays fall and for your planning purposes, that calendar is up there. You'll see that we are returning to Thursday minimum days. I know people loved Friday minimum days, but the challenge on a Friday minimum day is they love it because they can take a long weekend. And unfortunately, schools get funded when kids show up, and long weekends don't work well as far as keeping the lights on and paying our staff. So we'll be moving back to Thursday minimum days. Those will be the 1:30 release days. We'll be returning to or maintaining the 8:30 start for all students. TK, the transitional kindergarten students, will be released every day at 1:30. And all other students, including our kindergartners, will be at school until 3 p.m. That was an approved schedule change that was scheduled to go into effect this current school year, but obviously things changed a little bit. But our kindergartners will stay until 3 o'clock next year. And then, yep, all those things we already talked about. There was a quick question in there about when was Saints Day again. Saints Day is scheduled for August 16th. So the Monday before school starts is Saints Day. And then people are asking, okay, you're planning for a normal school year. What are some of the assumptions that you're making? And what we're getting as far as guidance from health officials and politicians, and unfortunately those things overlap all too often, but we're getting guidance that we really can look to start in a normal school year. We don't anticipate having the barriers in the classrooms. If you feel very strongly about a barrier, a shield, or something along those lines, communicate that with your teachers. We are going to have more barriers than we know what to do with, but we're not anticipating putting them in the classrooms the way that we currently have. We're not anticipating the distancing requirements that were in place for this year. The health screenings are not likely to occur. So your arrivals to school and your departures from school hopefully will be a little easier than they are right now. We are getting indications that masks are still going to be likely, but we don't know for sure. We're optimistic that there'll be some guidance around masking outside that might loosen some of those requirements on outdoor mask wearing. But we're thinking right now masks indoors will probably be recommended and required. We are retaining some of the practices that we put in place this year that promote general health. So we added an additional custodian this year to make sure that our classrooms were super clean. We're going to fund that custodian again for the current year to make sure we have clean classes. We are using some of the COVID money to do an overhaul of all of our air conditioning units so that we can improve not only the efficiency, but the health conditions within our rooms. So if you see some big cranes on campus this summer, that's putting in our new air conditioning units. They will have the MERV 13 filters that are recommended, and we will continue to keep in the medical grade HEPA filter portable units in all of our classrooms as well. So the big thing we're leaning on for next year is keeping our classrooms clean and keeping the air quality strong, which is the guidance that we tend to get. We are also hearing that there won't be any requirements for distance learning for next year. And so distance learning in Sacramento has kind of turned into a dirty word because people had so many miserable experiences with it. I can say that here at San Pasqual, we had a better distance learning program than most because our teachers were really actively involved in it, especially at our elementary level. But what we found is kids didn't do as well on distance learning as they did coming to school. And that's probably not a surprise to most of you here. And so we do not intend to offer a distance learning program for next year. If it is required, we will have a distance program, but it won't look like it did this year, especially at the elementary level. It will be separated from the classroom teachers and probably more along the lines of an independent study. Like I said, we don't anticipate offering distance learning as it really, with very few exceptions, was not the best environment for our kids to learn. And so we're looking forward to bringing them back at school where we do what we do best. We're also hoping to reduce the need for the cohorting this year. We saw some secondary consequences. It was interesting when we cohorted groups, meaning we kept classes together. We saw two things. We saw some tighter class cohesion. You know, when you're in class with students and that's the same students that you go to break with and the same students you have lunch with, and you never interact with other students, there is some ability to form some cohesion. But we also saw some conflict built up by that, where students really weren't able to spread out and make new friends and get away from kids that they weren't having positive relationships with. So we're hopeful that there'll be some reduction in the need to cohort, but we'll keep a close eye on that because the benefit to our cohorting was when there was a case that we had that was a school impacted case. It only affected that cohort group. And so our goal is to keep kids in school and to keep them learning at school. So we'll take a look at how that might affect our ability to do that. But we're hopeful that we won't have as stringent requirements. Some other good news about next year is that there is additional funding coming in through CARES money and some funding sources that are coming in due to coronavirus. And a lot of them are the safety ones. Let's make schools safe so that, you know, framing it so that schools can open. We've been open for a while, but we're taking the safety money putting that into our air conditionings to improve air quality, and then taking the money to enhance our learning and putting it in to some additional staff. And so what you'll see next year is, this year we had a part-time reading specialist, and we'll be having a full-time reading specialist for next year. So we'll have additional support so that kids can become better readers. This current year, we had a part-time English learner teacher. Next year, we'll have a full-time English learner teacher so that we can really serve the needs of the kids that are developing their language, and we're disproportionately impacted by this. We're also funding a full-time arts, social emotional learning position. And so one of the big things is kids were affected not only academically by this, but socially and emotionally, and the trauma that goes along. And so what's always been important to folks here at San Pasqual is our arts program. And when we moved into this model of distance learning, and then kids were only on campus for limited periods of time, some of those things like art and music suffered because teachers were using that time to focus on core academics. And so we're really excited to bring those programs back, and we'll be able to do so with a full-time arts teacher that will embed and infuse that social emotional learning into there. We were also able to use our money from the CARES Act to fund an additional instructional aid. So there'll be more people in the class to support students learning. So we're super excited about next year. One of the things that we're most excited about is the ability to bring you guys back. One thing that makes San Pasqual special is our parent involvement and all the cool things that opportunities that are created for kids because you guys are so involved. And we've been really impressed at the creative ways parents have stayed connected and involved with us through this, but we'd love to welcome you back. And so there'll be some opportunities, even some opportunities right now to start getting involved in such things. We met last week with the leaders of our PTO and the leaders of our school foundation to talk about some initiatives that are moving forward. The PTO right now, they're looking to add a few more board members, some folks that would like to chair events or to just be volunteers. And so look for a flyer coming out from them. So there'll be a solicitation. They would love to connect with a few of you now and have you involved in the planning for the coming year. They are looking for a vice president. They're looking for somebody to be communications director, which is a fancy way of the people who put flyers together and get the message out. We always help with that. No experience needed on our PTO. And if you're interested, San Pasqual Union PTO at gmail.com. So maybe Pamela can put that in the link, would be a way that you could reach out to them if you're interested in becoming part of the PTO. Foundation also wanted me to thank you for your generosity over this year. They had phenomenal success in their fundraisers and their virtual events. And they've got some really cool things coming up for the current year. They've got a really cool initiative that they're working on to modernize classrooms. I'm going to keep that as a secret for now, but they've got some really cool things on the horizon for not only supporting things that will help kids learn, but programs that'll help them learn. So look for ways that you can support the foundation. They'll be getting some of their fundraisers out. Red Barn Arts is reconstituting. For those of you who know Kami Go, she's going to be heading up our Red Barn Arts program. And one of the amazing things about Red Barn Arts was the ability to have art docents in each classroom. And again, no experience required. We can fully support you as far as how those programs work, but we'll be soliciting out for some docents. So as classes get determined for next year, we'll be soliciting out for a docent or two from each room, and know that those docents will be supported not only by Kami, but by the arts teacher that we have. So we're really excited about bringing Red Barn Arts back here, and you'll see the email address to Red Barn Arts in the chat. And Sage Garden, we received some grant monies from the San Diego Community Foundation. We received some career tech money, and we're doing some revitalization projects in the garden. We built an outdoor amphitheater. We've installed a native garden. We're redoing all the garden boxes so that they're protected from the critters. We're doing some, looking to install some bat boxes, owl boxes with Wi-Fi wiring so kids can see it in the classrooms. Lots of really cool things in the garden. We will be doing some garden projects this summer. So if you are interested in becoming part of the garden, let me know. We can kind of give you some ideas of what it looks like now and then what it'll look like into the school year. There's questions as how will Red Barn Arts work in line with a full-time art teacher? That is a fabulous question. We haven't figured that out yet. What we're looking at doing is a little bit more structure to the program. But the beauty of the program is that the art docents were able to come in and support the classroom so that a lot of the materials, lessons, and cleanup could be taken care of so that the teacher was able to lead and manage those lessons, but not have to worry about the setup and the plan. Where I see it being slightly different is our arts teacher will be looking to do arts integration, which is we're looking to take what are lessons that students are learning within the classroom and how can we integrate those in other areas, including the arts. So I see just generally, I see it being integrated more into subject matter. But I do see that that arts teacher will do a lot of the visual arts. A lot of the performing arts, the singing, the theatrical side of things, some visual arts, and the Red Barn Arts will be doing more of the visual arts, the actual painting, drawing, sculpting, those kind of things. So that's what I anticipate, but we have not started up that program yet or met with Red Barn Arts to kind of define that. We will still have a fully dedicated art room. So I anticipate the docent program working a lot more similar to how it has looked in the past, but just tied to the classroom more. A question about whether we're going to be having middle school electives and kids club. Yes and yes to both. Kids club is a little easier to answer. Right now, unless we get to the point that there are some restrictions on cohorting, we are expecting to have kids club look very much like it's looked in the past. And so for those of you who are interested in it, typically Kids Club offers time between that 6:30 and 8 o'clock period in the morning when campus opens, and that either 1:30 or 3 o'clock till about 6:30 at night when students are released from school. So we expect to be offering those programs fully as we have in the past. One thing that we've done a little bit differently this year is we started pushing out more information on registering for Kids Club. And so if you have not seen that and you're interested in before or after school care, we are taking those names right now and getting students registered right now so that they're ready for the next school year. One of the challenges we've had in the past has been capacity. And so we're working hard to add more places and staff so that everybody who wants Kids Club has an access to get Kids Club. So if you're interested in that, maybe Pamela can put, Sue Davids is in charge of that. If you could put Sue Davids' email in the chat, that would help for Kids Club. And then middle school electives, we're still working on middle school electives, but we do plan on offering them. We're looking at it being slightly different than what we've seen in years past from the standpoint that middle school electives in the past were a conglomeration of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade all moved together. And it created some really difficult, glad it's a coffee with the principal, created some difficult scheduling challenges with our mixing our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And it also made it difficult to provide additional supports. So we're looking to build a schedule right now. We haven't figured out how all the moving parts will move. That provides electives that are available to all students, most likely in those areas that we've had before, arts and tech and communication, but we're still working those types of, that schedule configuration out. But also having an additional period for students that can be extended in their learning. So students that need more of a challenge and students that can be remediated. So we're looking at some of those options that are built into electives. So you may see our current thinking on schedule is to have less of a block schedule and more of more periods in the day so that we can offer these types of things. But like I said, that's still a work in progress, but yeah, we are looking to bring back those electives. And then finally, I think we got to those questions. I think I can sum it up by saying we're super optimistic about next year. We have been in a challenging state to continue to provide quality education and quality learning for our kids, and do it in a way that they're supported not only academically, but they still can have some social interaction, still have some fun, still feel like they're part of a school community. And we are so excited that if we can safely move forward with less of some of these restrictions preventing that happening fully, we're going to be much better for it, because we are a school that is definitely a community-based school, meaning that we really value all of our folks that are here from the school. They all bring super important things to our school. And the more connected that you guys can be connected, the more connected you guys can be to the school, the better we do our jobs and the better our kids are served. So we're really excited. And like I said, we haven't, you've been part of these, many of you have been part of these coffees for over a year. And I have not been this optimistic in a very long time. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I hope you guys are too. Let's see. I'm not too sure. We did have a question about San Pasqual Academy. What's happening with the Academy and how's that going to affect us here at the school? San Pasqual Academy, for those of you who may not be aware, it's a residential foster youth home that also has a high school on its campus. It's just down the road from the Safari Park. Students that live there who are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, most of them will attend school here. The Academy is a congregate care facility for foster youth, which means a whole lot of foster youth live in one place. And about 5 years ago, the federal government basically said, that's not a great setup for kids. It creates too much institutionalization of kids, and they need to stop. And so they shut down all of those facilities in the country and gave San Pasqual Academy a 5-year exemption. And that exemption was scheduled to expire in October. And so initially they were given okay, you're shutting down, can't take any new kids, and the students that are there need to be done by October. They subsequently granted that extension until June of 2022 to allow more students to graduate, conditioned upon no new students coming. And so right now we're going on to the assumption that the students from San Pasqual Academy that are 6th and 7th graders that currently reside at the Academy will come, but that we're not anticipating new students from the Academy. However, right now there's a lot of talk among the County Board of Supervisors and folks that oversee the Academy as to if it's going to be allowed to operate under its current format or repurposed for another format. And so what we are petitioning, both the educational side and the political side, is that when they make these decisions, that they keep us in mind, in that if there are students that are K through 8 students that are either going to be living there or served there, that we would be serving here at San Pasqual, that we'd be kept in mind as far as what decisions are made and how that would potentially impact us. In the past, we have not been granted much consideration when those decisions are made. So my goal is to make sure that they know that we're here, they know that we're impacted, and that whatever decisions are made are decisions that are positive for our school, and that, you know, our goal is to serve all students within our district, all students that transfer into our district. And so this isn't about not wanting to serve students, but it's about being considerate of the impact that students bring. And if our governmental agencies are making decisions, we want to make sure that those decisions are made with our students in mind. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. There was a question, is there a possibility that minimum days can stay on Fridays? I know that would be something that we would all love. Our teachers have also made some similar requests for those minimum day Fridays. We currently do have a board approved calendar that has those minimum days back to Thursday. And it's primarily a academic and financial decision. And the reason for that is when those minimum days are on Fridays, students are more apt not to come to school at all. And so not only are we not having students at school and they're not learning, but we're also not being funded for the days they're not here. So we do see a drop off in our ability to provide instruction to students who aren't here. and the ability to provide instruction to students when we have less funding to do so. And so that's the reason why very few schools will have those on Mondays and Fridays, because they're so convenient for a 3-day weekend. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Hopefully that's offset by some other good things, but no, expect that minimum day to be Thursday as we move into the next year. Checking to see, I'll try to jump into the chat real quick. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to share as a group? It looks like there were some questions in the chat. Kinder is going to be a full day next year. So if you have a kindergarten student, 3 o'clock dismissal every day but Thursday. And if you have a TK student, and the TK students are those students that aren't 5 when school starts, but will turn 5 by the end of the calendar year. So by December 31st, they turn 5. Those students are eligible for TK. Those students will receive, those students will have a 1:30 dismissal time every day during the week. And right now it's shaping up that there's likely going to be a TK-K combo class next year. And so when we look at those classes, the real benefit to the kindergartners being in a TK-K combo is that at 1:30, half the students leave and you have that 1:30 to 3 o'clock time with a class of only 10 kids. Having my own kids been in those classes, I know it's a nice benefit. Some folks are interested in having their kids in a TK-K combo if your child's younger too, and they think that your child may end up doing 2 years of kindergarten. That's another thought. But that TK program for those students that are TK age, it is definitely a 2-year program, meaning that they will do their TK year and then they will have a kindergarten year after. If there is a combo class, which is, like I said, it's shaping up, we still instruct and hold our kindergarten students to the same academic standards. So there is not a drop-off of instruction. They still receive kindergarten instruction. They still have kindergarten expectations. It's just it's a balance. It's a class that's balanced between 2 grade levels. And that's one of the things that we try here. It is not always our first choice, but based on a school that's so small, we typically have combos in different grades, and that's the one that looks like it's shaping up for next school year. All right, well, I've probably told you, I think there was that question that just jumped in. Do you think COVID may impact future pay per student per day thinking? Pamela, it looks like it came from you. Can you clarify what that question is?
I'll jump in. I think it's based on attendance. So right now we get paid on our average daily attendance, and there has been a lot of talk. You know, we've already eliminated our attendance awards because it encourages students to come to school when they're sick, but the funding hasn't changed. So politicians and the legislators and whatnot have been talking about finding different ways to provide funding for schools. Right now, that hasn't happened yet, but there has been talk. That is beyond us as a district, beyond us as a county. So that will be coming down. Mark, is that state or federal?
That is state. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I can add to that is the state has been very forward thinking during this process in creating what they call a hold harmless process, in which we are funded both at attendance levels and student enrollment for what our enrollment was the year before last. And that has been super fortunate for us. We, like nearly all public school districts in at least in San Diego County, have seen a sharp decline in our enrollment. And so we are down from last year to this year about 10% of our students. And so that equates to significant funding reduction. But fortunately, due to that hold harmless, we are funded at last year's levels through this year and next year. And so one of our goals will be to get our enrollment back up so that we don't see this sharp decline in our funding. If the hold harmless wasn't in place, we'd expect to see about a $500,000 deficit in our funding starting this next year. And so If we don't get our enrollment up, we'll have some things that we'll really have to look at cutting. And so it'll be important for us to do our job to get our enrollment back up here at school, make sure that kids do show up at school when they're healthy to do so. And then I know our foundation's hard at work prioritizing some things that if our funding does go down, what are some things that are most important to us? So continue to support that foundation, share with them things that are really important to you, because that'll be a tough decision at some point if we do lose that funding. So checking in. Let's see, we have a question that came in, middle school question. Will sports resume back to normal? And if so, what sports does SBU participate in? Yes, we anticipate a full resumption to our sports. And so to kind of give you a general idea of our sports, we have boys and girls sports in football, soccer, volleyball, basketball. We also have a cross country and we do a track and field event. And I'm trying to think if I've missed any. We used to do softball, but we used to beat up on people too bad that they didn't want to play us in softball anymore. So what they did is they extended the season. So they have longer seasons, but less sports. But I am very optimistic about sports because barring some big change in guidance or safety around, the schools that we participate with tend to have less restrictions upon them as well. We do a lot of parochial stuff with Escondido Christian and Calvin Christian and so forth. And so they tend to be pretty open about getting their sports back. So we're really optimistic about those programs. So expect to see those. We also expect to bring our choir back as well for the coming school year. So dare I say normal, we are moving in that direction. So that's kind of what we're hoping for, and quite frankly, what we're expecting, and where our efforts and planning are going. So like I said, I feel good about moving into next year. Anybody else with any other questions or things that they either wanted to share or wanted to ask? What grade are sports offered? Good question. Sports are offered in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, depending on the sport and depending on the interest. Sometimes it gets narrowed to 7th and 8th. When you have sports that are, like a basketball or a volleyball that can only carry so many, we want to make sure that all kids eventually get the opportunity to play sports. And so we are much more interested in participation. So sometimes we don't have 6th graders participate in it, but for the most part, it's open to 6th, 7th, and 8th, as long as there's room. What grade is choir and or musical theater offered? Good question. Choir is also middle school, so 6th, 7th, and 8th graders would participate in our choir. And then our musical theater will depend on how our schedule is structured. Musical theater, as it has been a class, we've had a VAPA class. That was a middle school class. We don't know if we're going to be able to mix enough kids together, those 6th, 7th, and 8th together to make it as a class. So it might be more of an after school type of a thing. But that has been 6th, 7th, and 8th. But kind of backing up to it, all of our classes will be expected next year, as we have done in years past, to put on a performance. And so no matter what age your kid is, either a choir type performance or a musical or play, expect your kid to have a stage opportunity in the current year. And we really are very optimistic that that'll be offered from the standpoint that we now have an arts teacher that's dedicated, that can really help direct and spearhead those. And so kind of expect to see those across the board as events through the school year. But it's usually our middle school who puts on that big musical theatrical production at the end of the school year. And we're looking forward to that again in 2021-22. Any other questions? I think we hit all of those. All right. Yes, and there's a comment in here that Miss Winters has been most amazing teachers you could ask for, and they wanted to give a shout out to Miss Winters. I could not agree more. Miss Winters has probably put on, what would you say, Mrs. Lee, maybe 5 or 6 numbers for us over the course of this year, and it certainly is a well-needed refresher.
They do monthly songs out in the fire lane outside of the office. So it's adorable to watch.
Yeah, and they were the opening act for the variety show, and they did this thing with bells that, you know, I was a teacher for a long time and I taught older kids, and I could tell you I could never get my kids to have the restraint that she had. Will there be a PE teacher this year? And the answer to that is yes. We're actually looking to restructure the schedule to have PE through a credentialed teacher offered at least 1 day per week to all grade levels, TK through 8. So what we anticipate for the coming year, and we're still putting the schedule together, is we anticipate a schedule by which the PE teacher will lead middle school classes 2 days a week and elementary classes 1 day a week. And so that is the current schedule we're looking for PE teachers. Yeah, that was one of the things that we put in our planning, is that in order to promote students' health, we were focused on both that mental and physical health. And we know being cooped up at home wasn't the best for our kids, and not having structured PE classes was not best for our kids. So we're looking to add that in the coming year as well. All right, that's about all I have. Does anybody have any other messages? I mean, any other questions that they would like to either ask aloud or put in the chat? Because otherwise, that's about what we've got for you. So to sum it up, we have made it through the storm. We are optimistic about next year and looking to move forward, and would love your help. So keep us in mind. Like I said, we'll be soliciting a lot for folks to start getting involved, and then be ready as we come back at the beginning of the school year to reconstitute some of those groups and some of the great things that we're known for here at SPU. All right, appreciate it, guys. If there's no more questions, we will head out. Like I said, our video will be up on YouTube probably within about 24 hours if you missed any part of this. But feel free to reach out to us directly. We'd be happy to answer any and all of your questions. All right, have a great day. Be safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye.